My dad, 43 male, got married a little over a month ago. I, teen, met his wife, 39 female, and her daughter just under 2 months ago. They had a long-distance relationship before that. Dad's stepdaughter is a toddler. The incident in question happened a week ago. My dad's wife's daughter wasn't home. I think she was with a friend of my dad's or something. But they did that so that they could talk to me. Dad's wife told me that she and my dad needed me to know that their daughter would need me more than ever. She told me that while she was married to her ex-husband, she had an affair and that her daughter was born as a result of the affair, and that all her older kids all made it clear they were disgusted by her and found her repulsive as an affair baby, and she said they made it clear they would never consider her a sibling or treat her the same as they treat each other because she's tainted by the way she was born and all this stuff. She told me that meeting my dad was the best thing ever, and she was so grateful they had the chance to move so her daughter wouldn't grow up feeling hated every day, and so she had the chance at a family who would love her and treat her the way she deserved to be treated. I didn't really get why she was telling me at that moment, and I felt like it was a weird thing to bring up to me. So I asked why this stuff was my problem when they were still practically strangers to me. They got mad and told me that was a horrific way to react to being told my new sister was treated terribly before and hated for something she couldn't control. They told me it should be obvious why I was being told, because they wanted me to make an effort to be her older brother and not just a stepbrother she lived with for 2 years and then turned his back on her once he was out of the house. They said I could be a great addition to her life, and I should be honoured that I get the chance to have a sibling because of losing my mom so young, and Dad not finding anyone else special until years later meant I could have remained an only child forever. My reaction was not what they liked, and then they told me my attitude was a problem, and my reaction to being given relevant information, as well as my lack of enthusiasm to be there for Dad's new stepdaughter, was painting me in a negative light. Dad's wife told me I was lucky they had the foresight not to say this with her daughter in the house, because it would be crushing for a little girl to pick up on my lack of affection for her. I asked where the affection was meant to come from after so little time and being thrown together as strangers. The last week they've made comments about my attitude, and my dad told me I was out of order being so rude and dismissive with my "why is this my problem?" Not the idiot, you asked a very good question. Why is it your problem? You should ask your dad some more questions like why he believes it's an honor for you to be responsible for a toddler while you're a teenager. Also, if you're responsible for the emotional well-being of the 4-year-old, who's going to be responsible for your emotional well-being since you're still a kid? These adults have some issues. Both of these people sound very immature in regards to talking to teenagers and raising children. I have absolutely no clue why new wife would feel the need to give you any intimate details about her affair child. I think this simply could have been covered with, please be nice to the little stepsister, she has some issues. You may want to recommend to your dad that he, new wife and kid, speak to a professional therapist about blended families. You can't help them with their problems. I have absolutely no clue why new wife would include any intimate details about her affair child. I guess to make it a sob story and guilt OP into accepting it. Oh wait, so did your new stepmother abandon her other children after her affair? She's a real piece of work. Her own kids probably rejected your stepmother. Wow, your dad messed up big time here. Your stepmom cheating and her daughter being the result of her cheating is not your problem. My guess, she wants you to be a brother to her daughter so she can have free babysitting and dump her kid on you. Also, doesn't your dad take her being a cheater and acting like this as a red flag? My advice is to talk to your dad alone. If that doesn't work, try to be civil but keep your distance until you can move out. I'll start at the beginning. My ex-husband was a good father but a terrible husband. I divorced him when my oldest was 14 and youngest was 10. Well, he ended up spiraling and the kids were exposed to that. I was blamed for ruining Dad. He got better after a few years but ended up doing it again when he learned I was dating. So the kids kept trying to get me not to date since it will affect their dad. It was an awful time since, to the kids, I was still responsible for what he did and reacted to things. In the end, I just kept my dating on the low end, which wasn't hard since it wasn't introducing the kids to the men anyway. All I had to change was not posting on social media. Also, yes, I sent the kids to therapy. They all stopped when they hit 18 or my middle child refused to talk, so I pulled him. The oldest is now 25 and the youngest is 21 and I got proposed to. I sat them down and told them. They weren't happy and were angry I was doing this to Dad. Lots of talk later and I thought it was good. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I got a text from all the kids saying they will not be at my wedding, that they need to support Dad during this time. I had enough and texted them that if they didn't go to my wedding, it will damage our relationship and I will not be attending their own weddings when they get married. They were angry and it started an argument, and all of them thought I was a huge jerk. I truly hate that I can't do anything that makes me happy since it will affect my ex. Edit, kids were going to go, my daughter was actually going to play the piano for when I walked down. Now they are not. I divorced him since he was a horrible husband, never helped me in any way, and to me I was a personal bang maid. They blame me for his actions since I set him off with the divorce or dating. I never speak about him due to this reason. I kept my mouth closed, and when something bad happened to him, my go-to response was, "I'm sorry to hear that for him." I made sure to keep my feelings about him close to my chest. I kind of want to tell them every horrible thing he did in our marriage, but all that would do would hurt the kids since they do love him. Not the idiot. They are adults now and should realize that you're under no obligation to stay single to appease your ex. They are not the only people who've had parents divorce, and yet it seems like they can't get over it. And if, after all this time, your ex is still emotionally impacted by your personal life, then he needs to get on with his life and get help because it's not healthy. Also, assuming that they want you to go to their weddings in the future, are they expecting you to go solo and not bring your husband? You are allowed to move on. You don't need to put your personal life on hold just because it doesn't sit well with your ex. Your children need to be supportive of both their parents. They're no longer bratty teenagers, they're adults now. Ex's parental alienation campaign against you seems to have been pretty effective, and he's made the kids believe that you're responsible for his happiness and well-being. It's time to tell them the truth about their father. This absolutely sounds like parental alienation, and it sounds like Dad is a huge narcissist if he can't let go of his ex-wife and he spirals anytime she does something to make herself happy. He's manipulated your children to try and get them to control you. The only way to solve the problem is for your children to see and understand what your ex is doing and why it's so unreasonable. Unfortunately, it might take a very long time for your kids to find clarity. Good luck. Update, I realized I'm okay letting them go. I can't do it anymore. If they do go, I have hope to fix this relationship. If not, I'm just done. I can't keep playing this game. It's for everything. Anytime I have something good, his feelings have to come first. I can't do that anymore. It hurts too much. You convinced me to lay it all out for them, so I did send them every single thing. I think it's over. Thanks for everyone that tried to help. I know this is a no-win situation. I, 32 female, have been with my long-term boyfriend, 35 male, for 7 years now. I'm not religious, nor am I someone who thinks marriage is necessary in a long-term relationship, but I admit that the bureaucratic benefits are great. My boyfriend, on the other hand, is someone who believes in the institution of marriage. When we started getting serious about 9 months into our relationship, we discussed marriage and I made it clear that I have some conditions before I'd marry him. Chief among them was that he should get rid of his debt and improve his finances. Not income, but how he manages them. Now 6 years later, after a lot of effort from him and help from me, he is consumer debt-free and almost done with his student loans, as in they would have been paid by February next year, and we seriously discussed getting married soon after. I made it clear that I want to not spend a whole lot on the whole affair. Well, he proposed on Saturday and it was a beautiful affair, and of course I said yes. Then we get home and I ask about my ring. He proudly informs me that it costs $14,000. At first I thought he took from our savings to buy it and I was angry, but I became even more angry when he said he got it on payments. I gave it back and said that I no longer accept his proposal, that I was in fact rethinking our whole relationship if he was going to go ahead and throw all our sacrifices down the drain for a rock. He got angry with me and said that he only wanted me to feel special, and I reminded him that for me, us being financially stable is much more important than a piece of jewelry. Anyway, I'm posting here to see if taking back my acceptance was really an idiot move or if it's justified. Under normal circumstances, I would say you're being silly over a ring, but it's very clear that he couldn't afford this ring. The cost of it was important to him for some weird status reasons, and that you discussed your prioritization of healthy finances. With all of that, you're not the idiot. It's like he listened to your objectives of healthy financial planning, but never actually learned anything about it. It's like, I must quit smoking, and when I succeed I can start smoking again, because I know I can quit. Seriously, it's just crazy how your partner can emphasize something so important to them and you whiff it this badly. And who wants to be worried about losing a $14,000 ring? It's a burden, plain and simple. Geez, I can't imagine walking around with something that costs as much as a used Toyota Corolla on my finger. Honey, being debt-free and financially stable is vital to you, and you clearly don't feel the need to be adorned with expensive stuff, especially not at the cost of going into debt. He's completely disregarded what I assume he must know about you by now, after having spent 7 years together. So no, I understand you. 100% not the idiot. However, you are at risk of being an idiot if you waste any more of this bloke's time. Sounds like there may be a rather large compatibility issue here, and you've already sunk 7 years into this. How much more time do you want to waste hoping he'll come around to your way of thinking, or marrying him just then to argue with him over money for the rest of your life? By the way, as you probably know, depending on your local laws, the moment you marry, you would become liable for that $14,000 too. My wife, 31 female, and I, 30 male, were having a gender reveal for our first child. My wife doesn't mind what gender the baby is. She just wanted to get a few friends and family together for a small party, and she was under the impression that I thought that too. Neither of us was interested in doing anything big, we just had a friend to read out the letter and reveal the gender. I didn't tell my wife this, but I was really hoping for a daughter instead of a son, so when it was revealed that we'd be having a boy, it really upset me. I didn't want to ruin the day though, so I just tried to act normal and celebrate with my wife and the family. Later on, after everyone had left, I was alone in our room whilst my wife was downstairs. I was sitting on the bed and just started crying. I don't often cry. I think it's a waste of my time and unnecessary, but I was just really panicking. I really wanted a daughter because my dad was really crappy to me and he messed me up a lot. I'm scared that I'll be the same to my son. I don't want to mess up my son like my dad did to me. I've been scared about turning into my dad since before I met my wife. The big reason I didn't want kids originally was in case I treated them like my dad treated me. My wife walked in on me crying and I tried to explain why without talking about my dad much. She doesn't know anything about what my dad was like. She told me that I was selfish and called me a few other things. Then she told me to sleep on the couch. She hasn't really been the same with me since. She's still really annoyed. Am I the idiot? So you are not the idiot for crying or panicking or freaking out, but you are the idiot for not sharing this with your wife, though I get that in a moment of fear and panic, digging deep and pulling something like that out can be difficult. There are a lot of mentions here about gender disappointment, but I guess that's not what's happening here. It rather sounds more like some sort of trauma response. Hopefully, for your son's sake, you'll open up to your wife, get some help, and realize you can absolutely be an amazing father to anyone. All of this. Also, if someone wants a baby of a particular gender, they should choose a route other than the comparative roulette of typical biological conception. To me, it's incredibly irresponsible to enter into a 50-50 gamble and then be disappointed when it's your less desired outcome. You knew the chances were equal and should be happy with either outcome. This exactly. Why haven't you told your wife about your upbringing? You're about to be a parent, and to keep that sort of trauma from your partner is unfair. Of course she reacted badly. She doesn't have the whole story, and she needs to know so you two can be on the same page about how to parent your child together. Update. My dad was a good dad to my half-sister. She didn't live with us, but she came over on weekends, which I think is mainly why I'm not worried about being a bad dad to a hypothetical daughter, because my dad was never bad to my sister. I wouldn't treat my kids differently on purpose, though. I thought I was over the fear, to be honest, but it's just been getting worse the closer we get to him being born. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to try and find a way to tell my wife about my childhood. I've just never spoken to anyone about it before. I, 50 female, have 2 kids. Laura, 26 female, and Chris, 29 male. Laura is an interior designer and Chris is an RN. I met Laura's girlfriend of 6 months, Heather, 28 female, in person around 2 weeks ago at a family gathering. Heather was absolutely delightful. She was polite, charming, kind, and she obviously had heart eyes around Laura, so we all immediately got to like her. She also hit it off with my mother, Ruth, 75 female, really well. My mom got sick the other day. She was breathless, pale, and kept saying her chest was hurting. Heather is training to be a cardiologist, so after calling the ambulance, she was the first person I called. She came to the hospital with Laura, helped us throughout the whole process, and only left after everything was sorted out and Mom was well. Chris was pretty mad at me for calling Heather because he said meeting a person once isn't an indication to call them during an emergency. He said I should apologize for disturbing Heather or get her a thank you gift or something, which I certainly will. He told me I'd crossed a line and I should have called him first instead of Heather. Was I wrong to call her? I talked to Laura and she said Heather didn't mind the whole thing at all and was happy to help. She also said Heather was glad she was already being treated as part of the family. I will 100% get her a thank you gift. Not the idiot. You reached out to the most qualified person in an emergency, and you've heard nothing from Laura or Heather indicating she was uncomfortable. Chris might be used to people asking him for medical opinions and protecting Heather proactively, or he might be jealous of Heather's qualifications. I would reach out to Laura and ask if you made Heather uncomfortable just to be aware of her boundaries in the future. But in this moment of crisis, you did nothing wrong. A cardiologist trumps a nurse in this case. Yes, it would have been better to call Laura and ask her to bring Heather, but in an emergency your brain doesn't always function rationally. I get that. Glad your mother is feeling better. Honestly, it sounds like the RN is feeling a little butthurt now that there's a doctor in the family. Isn't this Chris's grandmother? Like, of course he's upset. Not to mention this whole thread is obsessed that she's a brand new resident. Like, what would a new cardiologist do that an experienced nurse couldn't? She would have no EKG, no labs, no vitals, just signs and symptoms which any ED nurse could recognize just as quickly. Not to mention that Chris most likely has thousands of hours of patient experience, whereas Heather hasn't passed her cardiology board and, based on her age, has very little MD experience. Chris knows his grandmother better and could probably offer better support to her than a stranger.